proud of you last night.
Feel it in my plums.
I'm proud of you. You made it all the way through.
I did. It was touch and go there now.
You didn't fall asleep.
It's touch and go. When it was 11 in the second half, I was like,
dude, it was a 7 o'clock game. Come on now.
I was way past my bedtime.
7:30.
Time did I get home? 10:30? It was late.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I ended up getting home around, I want to say I got home around 10:30. Well, because sticking around for the post game, all that kind of stuff. It was a spicy game. So yeah, but when we were walking out, I was
a good post game.
I had this realization. I'm like, oh, you're here still.
Yeah.
So proud of you.
Yeah. So did Kevin. Kevin was proud too.
Anyway. All right. We have a lot of things to get to.
Let's do it.
So let's do it. Let's podcast alongside Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovias. Inside Eford Studios, downtown Raleigh. Thanks to Empire Properties and thanks to Copiers Plus. Check them out online at copiers-plus.com. Print assessment, document management, the cloud. You might not know what the cloud does, but they do, Joe. So get that assessment today. Go to copiers-plus.com. Your assessment on Wake Forest, NC State last night. A little bit of a sleepy crowd, a little bit of one of those, oh, here we go again. And then Kevin Keatts gets tossed. And I thought the demeanor changed for just about everybody. And it ended up being a pretty entertaining second half.
Whale of a game.
Yeah, man.
Also a tale of two halves there.
Yeah.
I thought Steve Forbes actually surmised that one properly.
Oh, he was pissed.
First half, they looked good, moving the ball around. I love their starting five. I love the way that they moved the ball. Boopy Miller. How do you not like a guy named Boopy? And then, Efton Reed was really kind of controlling things in the middle. They had a plan for DJ Burns, who was also under the weather, but certainly wasn't the guy who scored 35 on them last year in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
You got to feel really good up 45-35 at the half. And then, Kevin's ejected with 3 or 4 minutes left.
Yeah, there was like 3:30 left in the first half.
Yeah. So, you got to be feeling pretty good. State didn't make a three. Right.
So I was,
and DJ's not playing well. So you got to be sitting here thinking, well, how are we going to lose this game?
DJ Burns is literally yakking in a can in the tunnel, dude. Like it was a weird night all around. You mentioned not making a three. They took 8 threes. And as I was walking on the 5th floor at PNC, they pipe in the Wolfpack radio network, and Gary Hahn and Tony Haynes were talking about the fact that they hadn't made a three. And I just kind of caught a brief moment of it, where Gary was saying something along the lines of, or maybe it was Tony saying something along the lines of, yeah, it's been like 290 some odd games since they won a game or had a game without making a three-pointer. As I joked on social media last night, trying to win a game without making a three-pointer, let alone only 8 3-point attempts, is like playing GoldenEye, License to Kill, slappers only. Like, you're making it difficult on yourself. But there's another stat I'll bring up in a second that illustrates how NC State ultimately won that game. But that was you line that up, you're probably thinking, man, that's not going NC State's way.
NC State's not a good 3-point shooting team.
No.
So if you're not a good 3-point shooting team, stop taking threes. Their previous season low in attempts was 17 against Charleston Southern, and the disaster at Notre Dame that they ended up pulling out. So only taking 8, that's smart basketball. Taking the ball to the basket is smart basketball. Getting the minutes that they get out of Mo Diarra last night, I thought he was really the unsung hero again. Second time I'm pointing this out in an ACC game that I thought Mo Diarra was the MVP of the game. And Ben Middlebrooks, the offensive production from Ben Middlebrooks, in addition to the defense that he was playing. And then DJ Horn having the wherewithal. He missed a couple of threes, kick out threes that I thought, ooh, that's not good. Having the wherewithal to understand, use the big screen from the big guys. Come off the screen, use your mid-range game, score the points that he did, finishes with 21 points. He has really emerged now as their bus driver.
So Brian Geisinger, our friend, does a lot of nerdy, wonky basketball stuff, and I say that in the most loving way possible. Geisinger is all about that stuff. And he pointed out that NC State scoring 1.11 points per possession despite 0 of 8 from 3. He says it's wild. 29 of 46 from 2, 63% shooting percentage from 2, including 23 unassisted 2s with a 21% assist rate. Pretty special mid-range shooting by DJ Horn. Pointed out that Horn went 9 of 15, 60% from 2, including 9 of 13 away from the rim, 7 of 8 inside the paint, but outside the restricted. There are a lot of ways to win basketball games. That's certainly one of them.
Yes.
That's certainly one of them. So,
no, you had to have help from Wake with 16 turnovers.
See, that's the other end of this. And this is
but part of that is your defense, too.
You and I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and we got that sense from Steve Forbes, the Wake Forest head coach, about he looks at this group as a special group.
Yeah.
Like, this is a group that can make the NCAA tournament, obviously. It's a group that he feels that can truly compete in the ACC. And again, you can see that by the standings. It's a very old school throwback top of the ACC standings with NC State and UNC and Duke and Wake Forest, et cetera, right? That's great. I mean, the league, it might upset our Virginia friends, but the league is better when the Big Four is cooking. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. And games like that
there's room for the Virginia teams too.
You're right. I'm not disagreeing with
the interlopers that bother me.
I'm with you on that. But last night, if you're an old head and you watch that game in the second half, you were absolutely feeling it in the building. And I'm sure if you were at home watching it, you were feeling it because it was spicy. That's a lot of fun. And that only happens when you've got these Big Four teams cooking at a particular level. But the problem that I have with Wake, and I think a problem that a lot of Wake Forest fans have with the Demon Deacons, is related to closing. And the issue with closing comes down to your defense. They were kind of, speaking of throwing up, they were kind of throwing up on themselves. Steve Forbes talked about it last night. Like, NC State upped their defensive pressure. He gave them credit, but he's like, come on, we can't dribble? You were dribbling. I mean, all sorts of things that were mistakes, but NC State put him in that position. Wake's got to find a better way to get out of that, because I saw something similar against Florida State on the road in Tallahassee earlier in the year. Yeah,
I mean, State is elite defensively when it's Morcell, Taylor, Middlebrooks, Diarra on the floor.
Yeah.
Like, that's, you're talking about old players. You're talking about big, long, athletic players. Like, Taylor in particular comes up with the play of the game on the turnover on Boopie Miller when State finally took the lead 70-69. Like, that was the play of the game to me. And we talk a lot about knowing your roles. We talk a lot about a coach's number one job is making sure that the players know their roles. Here we are on January 17th, and I think it's fairly clear that now NC State's players know their roles.
Yeah.
And again, you look at this box score and you see DJ Burns. Now, he was sick 20 minutes. Like, that is his sweet spot, man. And as Kevin pointed out, still scored 10 points. Like, he still had his
he was
contribution. Like, there were still moments for him. But to me, the real revelation for State is Diarra and Middlebrooks figuring out their roles. And in a way, they're not complaining. It's like, okay, well, what do you need from me tonight? Diarra with 13 freaking boards in 24 minutes. He changed the tenor of the game.
I know you're going to talk about this a lot more with Scott Wood on Law of the Wolf. I know you guys are recording that today, so be on the lookout for a new episode of Law of the Wolf on your favorite podcast platforms and, of course, on our YouTube channel. Speaking of Kevin Keatts, he was clearly feeling it last night, and I'm wondering if Kevin Keatts, A, is a podcast listener, B, if he is, has he given us 5 stars? So he got ejected. This is now the second time he's been ejected this season, and you brought it up that he's been racking them up, and I followed up.
Racking them up this year. Yeah, you're racking them up this year.
Well, hey, I'm fighting more. Fighting more. You guys like fight, don't you?
Well, I'm picking up on a theme. If I'm wrong on that, tell me. But you start off with, you wrote we needed this one, not getting a lot of credit. The fight thing. I mean, am I wrong on that theme?
Yeah, no question. We're the least talked about team in the league that was 4-1. We were the least talked about team that was 3-0. We got our area has really good basketball, and I'm talking about Duke, Carolina, and Wake. And I told our team we're the least talked about out of everybody, but when you pull up the stats, we got the same record as everybody. So it's a fight.
But what happens when they do start talking about it?
Nothing. We're gonna do the same thing. Like, here's what I will tell you, Joe. This team is so locked into what we do. Nothing that anybody says on the outside is going to define how we play. You guys are going to write whatever you want to write regardless. You got a story to write. It's completely up to you. I understand that part of it.
We'll podcast.
We'll podcast it, yes. You will podcast it. But we're gonna just play and we'll figure it out at the end.
I was told, like, Kevin, I haven't written in like 6 years, man. If that.
You can post game.
Well, you pointed out to him after the fact that, because he was apparently, I guess, in his office watching the game, but he didn't see the final sequence of what was going on.
The Wi-Fi went out.
Yeah, and you brought this up.
You've never been more like us than the Wi-Fi went out on you.
Yeah. Is it the building, Joe? I mean,
Welcome to our world.
is that a shot at Craig in the building?
No.
It's not Greg's fault.
No. Craig wants to wrap it up. Shit, I'm gonna stay here for about 10 more questions. Right? It's just fun, man. I mean, like, listen, hey, I'm tired of this shit, man. I'm tired of people talking about how we ain't tough enough. Hey, we were pretty damn tough today, right? Okay. I'm not gonna go get any bourbon because I don't drink, but it was a hell of a night for us.
So that was Kevin Keatts as he closed things out. The Craig he's referring to is Craig Hamill, who is part of the athletic department communications, the SID. And it's interesting. We talked about State, Keatts, the Herb zone following the loss to Carolina. And I know you and Brownlow talked about this as well in relation to one thing that Dave Doran has evolved into is giving the fans the red meat.
Give the people what they want.
It looks like Kevin is giving the people what they want and leaning into that. Now you got to back that up with the wins,
Sure.
But yeah, man, this is what know your audience, right? That's always a key part of what you do in anything. You
Play
got
the hits, baby.
You got to know your audience, and there's a reason why State fans absolutely love Debbie Yao because Debbie Yao understood the audience. It took Dave Doran a bit to understand his audience. Now that he does, he's giving the people what they want, and I think Keatts. I don't know. Maybe this group and the toughness that they display is allowing Keatts to go out there and say things like that because he's not faking it. Like he truly believes that this team is a tough team. They are going to fight. Say what you want about the prettiness of the wins or the losses or whatever, but they're going to fight. Sometimes that's all you have to ask for. And if Keatts is going to fire it up like that, hey man, let's see how the rest of the season goes.
First time since they won the league in '89 that they're 5-1 in the league.
That's crazy.
It's a different schedule.
That's crazy.
It's not round robin. It's not exactly the same thing, but 35 years is 35 years.
I am curious though. I want to break this down a little bit. Do you have the screen up so you can watch this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Keatts, this was pulled from the television. So Keatts gets ejected and
so there's no call there on the Parker take. Then he's now out on the floor.
Yeah. Well, that's going to get a T.
Yep.
But here's the part that I want to focus on that I thought was interesting. So he's got to be held back, but here comes the shoulder move, right? Whoop, right. Like, look at that. Like, I want to play that back. Let's play that back. Look at that. Whoop. I love that. Now, he didn't quite get fully under the arm. Not the best swim move, probably a little bit more technique, some reps. I don't know, maybe go on over to the football facility.
A little bit of a rip. Yeah.
I don't know, like contact Tony Gibson and be like, all right, well, how can I improve this move to get past my guy? Right. So I thought that was interesting. And people are like, oh man, look at that move. I'm like, but I've seen it better. I've seen a better first step, an explosive first step, Joe. And you know who did that?
Our guy.
Elliott Avent back in 2016. This was in what?
Tell me you have this.
This was the regional?
Yeah.
Against what? Coastal Carolina,
the
right?
Shots, baby.
So I forgot why Avent was mad. Was it a non-call on a strike or something like that?
He was arguing balls and strikes.
Balls and strikes? Okay.
Yeah.
So here's Avent, in a classic baseball in a ump's face. He's going to get tossed here. All right, here we go. He gets to bam! Look at that! Look at that move! Look at that.
Keep in mind, he had been bitten by a snake previous to this, and this is why he still had the limp. So he was
that's right. He was limping there. He was now. So if I'm going NC State coaches, on their ability to evade the defender, Avent still tops.
Yeah.
So, and our friend Tim Peeler pointed out, speaking of ejections, that the last time somebody got ejected in PNC Arena was actually Chris Corciani and Tom Gugliotta, which of course ended up getting us to a coach ejection. Eventually, Carl Hess ejecting Mark Gottfried, but that wasn't at PNC Arena.
No, he didn't get ejected. He just got technical.
I thought he got ejected at Reynolds Coliseum.
No, just
technical.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then there you go. Then that stands.
Yes.
That stands. One other note from last night that has the internet blowing up. It's got the people going.
The birds?
DJ Horn. Mark Armstrong pulled this off the TV. At first, let me mute this here real quick. At first, I was curious about who was he actually giving the double bird to? Was it at Wake Forest in general? But then when you look at that angle, it's fairly obvious he's providing a double bird to the official. after a very spicy night at PNC Arena. And eventually,
You should be noted that's not Jeffrey Anderson, the one who was basically calling all of that.
No, it's not.
Trey
It's
Styles.
not. Horn clearly understanding that I got caught on camera, and he tweeted this out. My sincere apologies for what happened at the end of the game. I got caught up in the heat of the moment and made a disrespectful gesture that I should never have done. That's not who I am. Fine. It's an apology. My curiosity is, if it was directed towards the official, dude, you can't do that. You owned up to it.
Sure.
Cool. My curiosity is, will the ACC do anything about this?
It'll be interesting.
Should they do anything about it?
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
You can't.
Not
Yeah.
in the course of the
Like if
game
you're,
like that.
for me, if it was in the context of you're flipping the bird at Wake Forest, if you're doing it in the direction of the bench, maybe I'm like, okay, heat of the moment. Those are people jawing at each other. Don't do anything about it. Handle it internally. Keep it moving. You know, maybe apologize for, hey, you know what? I should have kept a cooler head, whatever. I shouldn't have flipped off the bench or something like that. Once you do it towards the officials, as it appears on that video, he was doing it towards the officials and he even kind of owns it. At that point, yeah, the line's been crossed and there's probably some consequence for your actions. I don't think it should be some crazy punishment for it, but if he ends up having to, I don't know, sit a half or maybe even a full game for that, it wouldn't surprise me. And I think everybody would understand, yeah, that's something that had to happen.
I did that once.
What? What did you do? What did you do?
Not the official, because you would get thrown out for that. We played, in New Jersey, basketball. Our conference was mostly white. Our school was mostly white. Our conference was mostly white.
Okay.
But there were 3 schools that were in Newark that we regularly played against. They were in our conference. So Clifford Scott was one of them. And I remember we played a day game there once. Like it was, usually we played at night, but we played for some reason, played like an afternoon game there. And we were coming off the court at halftime and they had a very vibrant student section. Obviously they were all black and my team was all white and they were talking trash along racial lines. And I was just like, you know what? You know, I gave him this. And my coach was like, what on earth are you doing? And I was like, well, they were calling us names. He's like, that is not the answer. And I was like, okay.
Live and you learn, Joe. Live and you learn.
Housekeeping.
We've now made it even easier to donate to Ovius and Giglio. Because apparently 2 clicks was too much for Giglio.
I love your McClatchy energy with this, by the way. I love it. I mean, we have people reaching out to us who want to give us money. Let's make it effing harder. Let's make sure we can't take the money from the people. We already had one person on the social media say, thank you for making it easier to give you money.
Well, we had one listener point out,
and I say,
I'm with Ovius because it literally took 2 clicks. But now it takes 3 clicks. It takes 3 clicks because all you have to do is go to ogtrianglemedia.com.
Ooh.
It'll take you.
Is there a big button? Hometown Realty style?
You go to ogtrianglemedia.com. It takes you directly to Red Circle's donation page.
Perfect.
And you can choose one time or recurring. Boom.
Take it all.
Yes. So there you go. Help fund us to the ACC tournament. We're not kidding, by the way.
No.
Hotels ain't cheap. So if you want to help us go to the ACC tournament, go to ogtrianglemedia.com and click that donation button. We have a lot of people who have been donating.
Yes.
A lot of people who have recurring.
Who've made the effort. Yes.
Who have
want to
made
make
that
it
effort.
easier.
And we salute you. We do actually thank you for that. We thank people who have signed up for the Tecmo Super Bowl tournament. We do have some spots. So go to, just email us, the oggoesdigital@gmail.com. Tell us you want to participate in the Tecmo Super Bowl tournament at Shady's Sunday, February 4th. It's going to be a lot of fun. $25 to enter, cash prizes to the winner. It'll be a lot of fun.
Even if you don't want to play, just come see us at Shady's.
Yeah.
Come hang out. Come have a beer or some bourbon.
I think we've convinced Brian Lowe and Dimitri to hang out with us.
We have.
You might see Dimitri's new Little Debbie oatmeal pie tattoo in honor of Nick Saban
that we workshopped on this program.
And indeed, speaking of workshopping things, Jamie over at Breaking Tea texted me this morning wondering if there was like a thing to do with NC State's spicy win over Wake Forest last night. Now, NC State's not going to approve like a little Mr. Wolf with the double birds. Like, that's not going to happen.
How about DJ double birds?
Maybe. Or maybe it's DJ vomiting in a can. I have no idea because I know that was a thing last night. But in the meantime, you can buy all sorts of great stuff at breakingtea.com/OG. You can buy our merch. What are you laughing at?
I don't think anybody wants to buy a shirt of somebody throwing up, Joe.
Joe, what have I always told you? What have I always told you?
There's something out there for everyone. Everyone has something on the internet.
Just like I've been workshopping a Triangle Media t-shirt that's like a satanic ritual because, we're part of the Illuminati, right? Anyway, go to breakingtea.com/OG to buy your merch. Speaking of that Tech Mode Super Bowl tournament, big thanks to Whitaker and Hamer. They're helping us out with that, with their spot Shady's in downtown Garner. If you find yourself needing legal advice, legal needs, Whitaker and Hamer can help you out. So check them out, wh.lawyer.
Yeah, maybe you have a stray reckless driving ticket.
Perhaps.
You probably didn't really earn or deserve, but you still have to fight in court.
Speaking of there's something for everyone, that includes houses. People have a particular wants and needs when it comes. Maybe you want something retro. Maybe you want new construction. Maybe you want to take advantage of the fact that the rates are coming down right now and you want to get ahead of the frenzy. And that's where Hometown Realty can come in. Check them out online at myhtr.com.
Such a great website, myhtr.com. Toggle right in the middle. Buy, sell. All you got to go is go to the top of that page and you can calculate. It's Hometown Realty, myhtr.com. Buy, sell, calculate.
Joining us on the Heaster Automotive Group hotline is Luke DeCock. Are you as tired as ACC officials are? How many games in a row have you worked?
I'm not, but I flew from London to Raleigh on Monday, so I feel like an ACC official. I felt like an ACC official on Tuesday. I got up, got a workout in, went over to the game. Did not have to get up for a 6 a.m. flight today, but yes, I am.
How are your high knees? You get those things up? Can you
I'm more of a Jamie Lucky walking on glass type of runner, so my knees don't get as high. But
you're ahead of Jamie. Come on.
Oh no, but you know what? Nothing but respect to ACC official Jamie Lucky, who, if you look at all the other officials, he's the one with the drawstring pants. He is going full comfort on the court, and I salute him for that.
Yes,
stealing money.
A salute for that. But this, when people want to complain about officiating like they did last night, there's a couple different things, and I'm not faulting people for complaining about officiating, is that sometimes we don't want to get to the root issue of officiating. These dudes are worked, man. They're tired, and it might lead to a night like last night.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jeffrey Anderson's going to be at the Final Four, whether State and Wake fans like it or not. This is a guy who's worked a lot of Final Fours. He's one of the best referees in the country. I think there were actually 2 problems last night, which resulted in him sort of taking over the game. One is due to weather or COVID or whatever. Clarence Armstrong, who's a veteran ref who was originally scheduled to work that game, got swapped out for Trey Stions, who's a younger up-and-coming ref who's the son of longtime ACC ref Ramey Stions. So when that happens sometimes, Jeb Hartness was the third referee, who's sort of a veteran, sort of middle-tier guy. When you have a really experienced veteran ref, there could be a sort of tendency to kind of try to orchestrate. So you get a situation where it feels like one ref is making most of the calls. And what happens is sometimes younger referees will defer to that person. And you see that dynamic sometimes. It's not uncommon. It's not something you don't see. The other one is, Jeffrey Anderson is coming back from the West Coast, worked Minnesota the night before, was on a long California trip, working his 8th straight day in 2 coasts. It's a lot, but the problem is the system is incentivized for these guys to work as much as they can. They get paid by the game. I flipped on the Santa Clara Gonzaga game to see if Herb could pull it off, and Roger Ayers was working that game. I'd literally seen him 24 hours before working State Carolina. So he got on a plane and flew to Santa Clara and worked that game with Jeffrey Anderson. And then, is now back working games on the East Coast. He at least had a day off after that. I think he worked the Notre Dame game in South Bend. But, if you go on KenPom and look at these schedules, as I see Joe did a few minutes before we, this morning anyway, you can see this. You can see it. And if you look at someone like Roger Ayers' schedule, you'll see he has a regular procession of ACC games, maybe 3 to 4 ACC games a week. But these guys are independent contractors, and they can go in and fill in the blanks in those schedules with games that other conferences have available. And the ACC does that and fills in gaps in its schedule with guys from other conferences. And it's just when they're independent contractors, they are incentivized to work as often as they can. They're paying for their own travel, so there's nobody to object with the idea of, are you going to go Clemson, Dallas, Seattle, Orlando, Maine, Chicago, Detroit? Like, there's nobody to say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. And then you get into the whole sort of Pandora's box of, well, should the conferences employ officials and blah, blah, blah. The conferences don't want to employ them, and the officials don't want to be employed. So you've got a lot of sort of disincentives to do that. So, and the third part of that is, okay, let's say you control their schedules and these top officials work less games. That means schools lower down the totem pole are going to get worse officials on a regular basis. So the general perception in the world of college basketball is you live with a guy working his 8th game in 8 nights because there aren't enough good referees to go around.
One other note about officiating, maybe things would be easier if there was, for lack of a better term, accountability. If players talk after the game and coaches talk after the game, maybe I'd like to hear the reasoning behind a quick double tech on Kevin Keatts. I'd like to get, all right, why did that end sequence? To me, I would have just been fine with the officials telling Ben Middlebrooks to just, hey, chill the hell out, and nothing gets called.
Why did we get multiple technicals? Why was Mo Diarra ejected with 1 technical?
Right.
I was digging through the rule book to figure out how that could happen, and then got texted by a source, no, you can eject a guy with 1 technical. I was like, well, the rule book is unclear on that.
Well, the fact that somebody has to text you on that, and you just can't, ask officials after the fact. I mean, maybe that would change some things. Maybe that would change the options.
I actually had less of a problem with the end game stuff because it ultimately ended up working out to be Middlebrooks. His proxy was able to finish the N1, and then the other techs came out in the wash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they should have because Salas had initiated with Middlebrooks, and then Diarra initiated with Salas, so they should be gone.
Yeah, I didn't have any problem with and you've got a game that's been chipping
forever.
Yeah, I mean,
it's forever.
I mean, I was at the Everton Aston Villa game at Goodness Park on Sunday. I sat through a 5-minute VAR delay, and then I'm reliving a 5-minute monitor delay as they try to figure out who they actually called the technicals on. My question for a pool reporter would have been, yes, the first thing about why was the second technical so quick for Kevin Keatts? Did he say something? Why wasn't he given the leeway that a technical coach usually says? Go ahead, Joe.
Since you and I were in Josh Goodson's seats, thanks to our good friends at RTP Mortgage, we were in row H. We were behind the scorer's table, and you and I, in real time, saw Kevin get the first technical. We said, okay, comes out on the court. That's a bing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All of a sudden, we're both within 20 feet of this going on?
15 yards. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Not far.
And there were no curse words. There were no magic words involved.
No, he did not say that one word that's a no with umpires. That's for sure.
Right. We both looked at each other like, did he just give him a second technical? Like, I just as Kevin said after the game, totally get the first one, earned it. Mm-hmm. That one's mine.
Yep.
The second one was the very definition of, hey, man, shit, I was in Minneapolis last night. And, buddy, I ain't on the team charter. And by the way, I was in California the night before.
Yeah.
So, and here I am in Raleigh, and I'm just happy the airport is 15 minutes from the arena, as opposed to, the sojourn I had to take to get to the Stanford Maples Pavilion. Right.
That had the feel of, if you guys don't stop fighting, I'm going to stop this car and we're going to turn right around.
I mean, look, my initial thought was Kevin Keatts was sick and he just didn't really feel like sitting out there.
Yeah.
Workshop that.
You're in charge.
Possible, but then
throw me out of this game.
Like, I'm done. Yeah, I'm tired. I don't want to do this.
Old Norman Dale.
But instead, he hung out and, he was there and he fired up the crowd after the fact and everything else. So
to your point about pool reports, though, I wrote about this last year. I think after the Virginia Duke shenanigans, where they ruled that the foul occurred after the whistle, but on a shot that occurred before the buzzer and blah, blah, blah. And we couldn't get any clarity on that for like 12 hours. And every time this happens, someone says, well, the ACC has a pool reporter policy. You have to go to the home SID. Do you know what home SIDs are doing in the 90 seconds after a game when you have to get to them to request a pool reporter because the officials are going to be off to the Marriott in 9 minutes?
Yeah.
They're busy. Yeah. They're doing other things. The ACC needs a workable pool reporter policy that does not involve people who have other responsibilities. And that's the NCAA tournament. They have a media coordinator who sits there on press row and does things like, if they need a pool reporter, goes and makes sure the officials don't leave. Asking home SIDs to do it is unfair to them because they got to get their coach out to the radio interview. They got to tell their players which players are doing media. They got to make sure the box score is not screwed up and the printer isn't broken. They got a million things to do. Asking them to go wrangle a referee on short notice. I've never asked for a pool reporter. I may have once and been told that the referees were already gone, is my best recollection. But that's because it's a flawed system. And for the ACC to hide behind, we have a pool reporter because they have an unworkable protocol in place is not a good answer. And I don't blame like the ACC, Andy over at the ACC who has to text people and tell them, well, actually, we have a pool reporter policy. I blame the people who wrote the policy who don't understand what SIDs do.
I suspect they should just have a standard procedure for ejections and technicals.
Yeah, and the AP writer or senior writer present should just assume, and the home SID should just assume that they're going to be able to ask the referee what was the. I mean, I just want to ask Jeffrey Anderson, can you explain how you handed out the technicals in the last sequence? And the answer is going to be, we felt that Ben Middlebrooks and Hunter Salas initiated contact with each other, and then Salas and Mohamed Diarra headbutted each other, and we felt that was a mutual headbutt. And we issued a technical to Salas for the initial incident and a technical to Salas for the second incident. We issued a technical to Ben Middlebrooks for initiating contact with Salas, and we issued a technical foul, a flagrant 2 contact technical foul to Mo Diarra for the headbutt. So he was ejected after 1 technical foul. Literally, I would walk back to the press room, type that up, email that to Craig Hamill at NC State. He emails that to everybody, and it's not an issue. And we're probably talking less about Jeffrey Anderson this morning and his wonderful high knees. And I still want to know, does he run that way on the treadmill?
Got to get your reps in somehow, right?
His Phoebe Central Park running.
I just want to see his Fitbit at the end of the night. Is he getting extra credit for that? Is he getting extra credit?
I mean, my Garmin doesn't give me credit for. It'll track like you're running.
Dude, my Garmin will tell me that I've accomplished my steps goal while I'm driving. So I mean, it's time for an update. This thing's a little bit on the old side.
Lost in all of this official talk. That was a nice basketball game.
It was
like a regular season basketball game with some stakes and some heat and two teams that didn't really like each other.
Look at the standing
coaches.
Yeah.
DJ Horn flipping the double bird and thinking no one was going to see him. Welcome to big time basketball, DJ. DJ Horn is the best quarter of the night among all of them. Have you ever been in a crazy game like that? I played for Bobby Hurley. It kind of happens a lot.
Was it an ACC network game though, Luke? I mean, chances are the camera might not have caught it. Just saying.
Yeah, maybe his odds were better than we're giving him credit for.
Anyway, all right. We're actually running out of time here, and we'll probably have to save this conversation for another day. But speaking of pools, you and I were talking about this up in the press box last night as it relates to the Carolina Hurricanes and the pool of candidates for the next Carolina Hurricanes Hall of Fame induction. Justin Williams goes in this week. Cool scene, great speech. Stinks that they lost that game. I know that Rod Brindamore talked about how they really wanted that one for Justin against his old team. XYZ. And Joe and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Knowing the rules, Eric Stahl's the most obvious next player to go in, but there are limitations in when he can go do that. So I feel like, and you're on this committee, so I don't know how much you can say and what you can say, but I do feel like after you've got the obvious choices, it's time for a contributor, and the contributor should be, at the very least, Jim Rutherford, former general manager of the Carolina Hurricanes.
Yeah, I do have to be careful what I say, but I do think it's within the bounds of obviousness to say that I think there is a demarcation between the players who have gone in and sort of the next tier of eligible players. Where Eric Stahl is eligible, I think he's an obvious one. I still think that there's players in the sort of previous era of the club, pre-2006, Jeff O'Neill, Artur Zerbe, who are worth considerable sort of consideration to be the next player in. I don't think it's a slam dunk that it's Eric Cole necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But I think obviously he's an obvious candidate as well, because of his role on the, not so much on the 2016 in the playoffs, obviously, but on the 06 team and his connection to the franchise. But yeah, I mean, I think it is absolutely time for a contributor, whether that's Peter Carmanos or Jim Rutherford. It's a little trickier with Peter Laviolette, who's still coaching, obviously. Be a little awkward to induct him into the Hall of Fame before a game against the Rangers, although I would certainly enjoy the sort of scenery of that. But yeah, I mean, when you have a setup where one player goes into the Hall each year, this isn't like baseball where any player who gets a certain number of votes or there's a contributor category or any of that. I think the voting is necessarily going to be biased toward players, but I'd love to see a contributor get in. And I think there's probably a long list of contributors people aren't necessarily thinking about at the top of their head because, you get into, is someone like Skip Cunningham or Chuck Caton or, down the road, are we looking at Carolina Hurricanes Hall of Famer Chopper Harrison? I mean, I know that's a deep cut, but there are people in the history of the franchise, Don McMillan, Donnie Mack. There are people in the history of franchise who played an essential role in what that club became today, who deserve to be honored, even in death. And I hope someday we get around to some of those people.
They can hear you in the locker room, Luke. Luke DeCock,
over here,
columnist, News and Observer. All right, man. We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you later.
See you guys.
Big thanks to Luke DeCock for hanging out with us here on Ovies and Giglio. And big thanks to State Farm, Matt Davis. Give him a call directly at 919-779-8277. InsureGarner.com is the website. TheOGinsurance.com is another website you can use that will redirect you there. Kind of like OG Triangle Media will redirect you to donations. But in this case, where you'll be giving us money with a donation,
We're helping you save money.
Matt Davis wants to put money back in your pocket that maybe you can give to us in a donation. I'm just saying, just a mere suggestion.
I like that circle of life.
Call Matt Davis today to save money on your insurance.
Yeah, do yourself a favor. 919-779-8277. A real person in a real office on Aversboro Road is going to answer the phone. And then you're going to have a real conversation to save yourself money.
Mm-hmm.
Auto insurance, home insurance, maybe your pet insurance, all kinds of needs, all kinds of coverage. Matt Davis, State Farm, 919-779-8277.
Also, big thanks to Homefield Apparel. Check them out, homefieldapparel.com. Homefield's got great vintage-inspired throwback tees for all your favorite schools as we're now in the meat of the college basketball season. Use that promo code OG23 to save 15% off your order.
Do what our friend Mark Wood did. Saw him on the concourse.
Yeah.
Last night, had his home field jacket on. And I said, oh man, that is very nice. He goes, and I thank you for the discount. And I said, yes, sir.
Love it.
OG23, save yourself 15%. And then once you buy one thing from home field, you will realize the outstanding quality of it. And you're like, man, I need more of this stuff.
I need another hoodie.
I need something else.
Which I'm actually getting close to buying another hoodie.
And there will be all kinds of discounts coming your way. So go check them out. It's homefieldapparel.com.
We're moving on.
I should send that promo code to Jay Williams to see if he wants to buy some UNC throwback gear, since apparently he wants to transfer to North Carolina, Joe. No, look, we've spent a good chunk of time talking about State today and Wake from last night's spicy game. I don't expect a spicy contest tonight between the Tar Heels and the Cardinals.
But you're going to be there.
Yeah, 9:00. Let's go, baby. So last night, Jay Williams was trending this morning. When I woke up, I'm like, oh, okay, what did Jay Williams say? Because look, I've known Jay for a long time. Yeah. Jay's an awesome dude. But I will admit, and I will tell Jay that sometimes I'm like, why did you say that out loud? And that apparently happened last night. Him and Boog Shambi were doing a game, and they were coming out of the break, and they were talking about the portal. And apparently, Jay had an interesting answer related to who he would go, where he would transfer today if he were playing today.
I know. This is a tough one because I don't know if I'll be allowed to go back home.
Are you about to say North Carolina?
I just like the way they play.
Wow.
It's a fast-paced style of play. I like it. They allow RJ Davis to go.
Holy cow.
What? What?
No. A little bit of context. Jay, actually, when I'm hearing that, I wanted to go Jay Williams, Coach K final game where he was doing the time. Like, call a timeout. I wanted to call a timeout on Jay. Like, no, buddy. What are you doing? What are you doing? Are we going to have to resurface the fact that you grew up being a Carolina fan? Are we going to have to tell the story again about how the way the recruitment process worked out? It was a full, just a full plate over at UNC, and that's how you ended up at. I mean, are we doing this again? Come on, man! You won a national championship with Duke. You're an all-timer at Duke. What are we doing here? All based on the style of play, as though in the portal era that has something to do with it. You know what Duke's really good at? They got a general manager. You know what Duke's also really good at? Putting money in your pocket. With all the big, enterprise things that they got going on right now. But I thought that was an interesting answer from Jay Williams last night, Joe.
Not rivals. That's all I could think about.
Not rivals.
I mean, you would never,
no,
a Carolina player would never be like, I want to go play for State.
No,
right?
No, that would never happen.
Come on.
Well, there's mutual respect between the two schools.
Yeah, that's always what Joel Berry's point has been.
Yes.
I was recruited by both schools. I know all these guys. They were recruited by both schools.
We all know each other. We've partied together. There's all sorts of stuff. It's a
Yeah.
very gentlemanly rivalry, Joe.
It is.
But sometimes people want a little sizzle to their rivalries, which is why the NC State Carolina one is entertaining. And so,
I don't know why Jay would choose violence there to himself.
I don't get it.
I'm
going to have to hit him up, man. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? Or maybe it's on Boog for bringing it up. I don't know. Maybe it was a conversation they were having, during the break.
He also seems to be putting himself in the present tense.
Yeah, because he also said back in the day, he said he would have gone to Georgetown.
Okay,
because he wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah,
and everything else, which makes sense.
I could see that.
I mean, that makes sense. But in the present tense,
St. John's, Syracuse, Georgetown all had amazing guards. I could see. Yeah.
I mean,
growing up in Jersey, the way that he did.
Although, it's funny though, with Carolina, it does kind of get to your overall point about in terms of best college jobs.
Yeah.
Carolina remains the best college job.
Yes.
Now, you just gotta go ahead and do what you can with having the best college job and take advantage of it, which is what North Carolina seems to be doing right now. We've spent a good chunk of time talking about the Big Four, and it's good to see, the four teams atop the standings. But I think you and I would both agree that Carolina has elevated itself a tier above Duke, State, and Wake Forest.
Yeah.
Duke's the one that probably has the yellow flags going on right now. Struggling against Georgia Tech twice, losing to Georgia Tech and then struggling to put him away, injury issues and everything else. So Carolina.
Horses for courses, I think, for Duke in that particular case. Sometimes you struggle against teams. You can't explain it.
One other thing before we get to some Hey Joe questions, as we are
Are we getting to Hey Joe questions, or are we getting out of here on some Hey Joe questions?
We will get out of here on Hey Joe questions, but we're not there yet.
I can't mark off the bingo card if you don't do it correctly.
We're not there yet, though, Joe.
We're moving on.
Teams are checking off the boxes with all their interviews, and I'm appreciating listeners seeing it, by the way. Yes. You see it now. The Atlanta Falcons just put out a tweet with actual content saying, we've completed interviews with these 7 guys. And it looks like a YouTube thumbnail. It's every single coach they've talked to, which includes Jim Harbaugh.
Jimmy Football.
Jim Harbaugh in the mix for the Atlanta Falcons after they've interviewed Bill Belichick, which is intriguing to say the least.
Gosh, they're going to be disappointed if they don't get one of those. If they get jabroni, NFL assistant,
brutal
number 68.
Woo! It's just absolutely.
You can't
brutal.
tease me that way, right? Like, you just have to. If you're gonna hire a no name, just hire a no name. Don't be like, well, we talked to Bear Bryant and Vince Lombardi. Oh, well, okay.
We did a seance. We did all these things. We talked to the spirits.
All to land on Arthur Smith's play caller. Like, oh, okay.
I don't know. Maybe as of this recording, we still don't know the future of Mike McCarthy.
I mean, we don't officially, but
no. But speaking of the future, I wanted to get into the NFL for a quick technology talk.
Oh, yes.
Quick technology talk.
It's a conversation that we had 20 years ago.
So the Kansas City Chiefs Miami Dolphins game was on Peacock on Saturday. And a lot of people were upset about this, that they put a wild card game essentially behind a paywall. If you wanted to watch the game, you had to sign up for the NBC Comcast streaming service, which, you can get into the merits of whether or not it's successful or not. But the point is, these networks, these media outlets view the NFL as the way to get people to subscribe. Just like Amazon viewed a Thursday Night Football package exclusively on Prime as a way to keep people on the app to watch stuff. And of course, I've always said this about Amazon, they want all your information. They want to know what you watch, how often you watch it, what teams you're into, so that when you log into Amazon,
doesn't everybody want your information? Isn't that what?
Pretty much, that's what it's all about.
Isn't that where we are?
That's what it's all about. So we got numbers on the NBC Peacock game. Streaming only and on over the air in local markets, Kansas City and Miami. And when I saw the number, Joe, I went, we are screwed. The future is here, man. It's finally here. It averaged 23 million viewers on Peacock, local NBC affiliates, NFL Plus, according to data from Nielsen Media Research. This is a big deal. I cannot stress enough how big of a deal this is. And the reason why so many sports fans had this visceral reaction to the game being on a streaming service and not on ESPN, not on a broadcast network, is because it's a very specific paywall that is different from cable, which is a bundle. This is a specific service. And I think seeing it like this, we can all see the future. And in the future is going to be more expensive because the networks go, oh, we see what you will and won't pay for. And we've got this big event. And John Skipper, the former head of ESPN, has said this before, and he has repeated it with his guy, Dan Le Batard, multiple times, that if they could put the Super Bowl on pay-per-view, they would. And most of us would pay for it. And this right here is the first crack. This is the first crack in the wall. And a lot of executives are going to see this and go, okay, let's see what else we can put on the streaming service to get people to pay up for it, right? And I said specific paywall because what's funny is that you do pay for cable. You know, when Monday Night Football moved to ESPN, right, there was this big like, oh my goodness, it's how it's on cable. Not everybody has cable. At that point in time, when they moved it over to ESPN, cable was in 110 million homes. If you wanted to watch Monday Night Football, if you were that hardcore of a football fan or even a casual, you'd find it because most cable services had ESPN, but not everybody has Peacock, Joe. I think I have a free Peacock account because I wanted to watch some episodes of like Battlestar Galactica or The Office, but I didn't sign up for this.
So there are no new ideas.
No.
Number one.
No.
The English Premier League does this.
Mm-hmm.
So that you and I, when I say we talked about this 20 years ago, literally 20 years ago, talked about how we thought the NFL would go to the original HBO model of pay for play.
Yeah.
You don't need cable. You just need this app. You download it. You watch us. You pay per month.
Mm-hmm.
And WWE is the one who did it instead of the NFL to mixed results, right?
Yeah, we had some mixed results.
I think the NFL is the one that could pull it off. Now, how much are these networks that are completely, now when I say networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, their success is totally and completely reliant on two things:
mm-hmm.
election money and NFL money.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two things they cannot live without.
Mm-hmm.
Cannot. How desperate will those networks get? That's the question. They're already desperate enough to pay them billions to have NFL games on over the air.
To your point, NBC paid $110 million for that game, to put it on a paywall. So that's how desperate they are to bulk up these streets. You talk about desperation. How can we carve out our niches to make sure that people are going to our platforms?
Mm-hmm.
That's how they do it.
Well, now we see ESPN is partnering with the NFL. Or they're working on a potential partnership.
About that, the New York Post reported late last week that the NFL is looking to buy a stake in ESPN. Andrew Marchand reported it as advanced talks, to the point where the NFLPA was informed of this stake because of how it would reflect in the collective bargaining and money being output and everything else, right? So according to Marchand at the New York Post, ESPN would run the NFL media arm. And
which
NFL Network, which already exists, NFL Network, Red Zone, all that kind of stuff. ESPN would absorb that. There's no telling if the NFL Network would still exist in this, or if all this stuff ends up going on ESPN Plus. Because remember, ESPN's trying to soak up all this stuff. You see this with the college football playoff rights too. It looks like they're going to pay a lot of money to keep the college football playoff away from everybody. So you see where this is going, because, how many sporting events do you think are big enough for a paywall, right? 90% of them are NFL related. So of course ESPN wants the NFL to buy a stake, because 90% of what you watch for these big events that people would go out of their way to do is NFL related.
I would note that we pay a monthly VIG to watch the Hurricanes on Bally Sports.
Yeah, Bally Sports, yeah. That's true too, but it's on a very, very small level compared to that's why I said like 90%. Because think about it. College football playoff would probably eat up the rest of that percentage. Let's say 80%. Let's say 80% is NFL.
F around and find out. Let's see.
Maybe 10% is college football playoff. I mean, I don't know. I mean, dude, did you watch?
We'll see.
When you watched on Monday night, did you not notice the commercials for the SEC from
Which
ESPN
game?
ABC?
I did not watch a ton of the Tampa Eagles game. I was at the Canes game for
so during that Tampa Eagles game, they spent a lot of time promoting the upcoming season of SEC football.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC did not get any of this.
No.
So ESPN kind of indicating to you what their priorities are, what they're going to invest in. So this is not great news. This is not great news for other sports. If you're not the NFL, if you're not the SEC, this is probably not great news.
Is there no trickle down to like our program? Let's take, for example, we're super local.
Yeah.
So people are a part of our audience because they want super local.
Yes.
Well, if you're sitting here telling me I have to pay ESPN to watch the SEC jam down my throat, well, I want something where I can pay to watch NC State and North Carolina and Duke and Wake Forest.
They'll still keep that. I think what you're getting at
isn't that what the ACC network is? Don't I pay for the ACC network? Don't I?
You do as part of a bundle. I think the ACC network is going in the direction that I called 3-4 years ago, in that it's going to end up being a tab on the app. It's not going to be its own linear network with its own programming, which, by the way, that's another thing that'll eventually go away, because ESPN is buying up all this stuff, and ESPN wants to go standalone in 2025 or 2026.
Standalone meaning I just have an ESPN app.
And you're going to pay $40-$50 a month. Because why would you pay that? You ultimately pay that because you want to watch the games. You're paying that to watch actual events, not necessarily watching First Take.
Interesting that the old model of pay-per-play, pay-per-view, no ads.
Oh, they're going to
that was the point. That was the point.
But they're still going to jam ads down your
Remember
throat.
HBO originally, when it was a cable channel?
Yes.
You paid for it because there were no ads.
Well,
you were specifically paying for the content. I believe, if I'm still watching, I don't watch any HBO shows right now, but there's still no ads on HBO.
Still no ads, because HBO is still a cable channel that does not have ads. But like Amazon, right? The whole value proposition of Amazon Prime.
When you watch an Amazon game, there's ads, right?
No, I'm talking about they're doing it with the shows now too.
Okay.
Yeah. Netflix also has ads now. The whole value proposition of Netflix was, you pay us $9.99 a month. Watch whatever you want. Now they've got another tier that I pay for, which is like $6.99 or $7.99, which gives you ads. So they still need ads for the growth to supplement all these other things. So don't act like ads are going away. Ads will again, Amazon just announced that, oh, by the way, we're introducing an ad-free tier to Prime. Oh, interesting.
This is some NCAA mind games here. We're not going to pay the employees.
Speaking of ads.
But you are.
You don't have to pay for us because we have great sponsors like Breeze Through. Go check them out. Locations across the Triangle and North Carolina. But for our purposes, there are some key locations that help us out all the time. There's the PNC Arena location. There's the McDee's Through on High House. And of course, a location out in Chapel Hill. And were you fueled up on Breeze Through coffee yesterday? Is that why you stayed awake, Joe?
I was feeling good. I stopped in before the game.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I needed gas too. I'm not going to lie to you.
Okay.
I think sometimes we forget that they have gas.
This is true.
Important element
kind
to
of
the
key.
business model.
Kind of key. Gas kind of important. So head on over to Breeze Through. Go check them out. We thank them for sponsoring Ovies and Gilio, just like we thank Butcher's Market for sponsoring Ovies and Gilio. After you get your gas and you're running all over the place, you're like, I don't have time. I just don't have time to cook. Don't worry. Butcher's Market has it.
Yeah, it's the OG special. Go to Lake Boone, get some prepared food, go to the Breeze Through, get your coffee, then go to the game.
You're done.
You're in.
Get your steak and cheese, get your coffee. You're in. Or on your way back, let's say this Saturday, right? There's a noon game.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Game's over.
You know, I love a noon special.
You go to Breeze to get your morning coffee.
Mhm.
You leave, you drop by that Lake Boone location at Butcher's Market.
Get yourself some signature steak tips. If you haven't done that yet, for real, what are we doing?
Seems like an easy peasy thing for me. All right. Let's get out of here on some Hey Joe questions.
I'm going to create the bingo card. I'm going to put it on the wall so each day that I can check it off.
Don't make me cough. I'm struggling with the cough, man. Don't make me cough, man.
It's allergies.
It is allergies, Joe. It is allergies.
Big pandemic energy.
Big thanks to Oakwood Pizza Box. Check them out in Raleigh. OakwoodPizzaBox.com. Is it Wednesday?
It's Wednesday.
They are open. All right, to Daniel on Twitter.
That's so good.
Is Mr. Tepper somewhere throwing water at the TV as he watches CJ Stroud?
Yeah.
He's probably throwing something stronger than water at the TV watching CJ Stroud do this thing.
It's hard. I'm telling you that in my Seinfeld episode, he goes and he gets Jackie Childs and he sues the creators of the S2 test for taking them off of the CJ Stroud scent.
Brutal. From Gary, from a strictly I want to enjoy sports every week standpoint, UNC should head straight to the Big 12 when the ACC breaks apart. Football competitive top to bottom, but no year in, year out behemoths. Hoops is strong. Baseball, yes, please.
You know how I feel about this? I do think ESPN is going to break up the ACC ultimately. I do think they are going to put a handful of teams in the Big 12. I do not think North Carolina will be one of those teams. I do think it is fait accompli that North Carolina ends up in the Big 10.
From Darwin Jim, hey, Joe, if I bought this for you, do you think you'd still be able to do a show with Gilio, or would you be too focused on this?
Oh, Jim, this is so good.
Oh, it's an Aaron Rodgers.
I really now
fat
want
head.
to clear out the space behind you one day and have you just come in with that Aaron Rodgers fat head as your sole background piece.
Aaron Rodgers hasn't taken credit for Jordan Love, has he?
I'm sure that's coming.
He didn't go Homer Simpson style into the hedge and then come out with his old Packers gear, right? He hasn't done that yet. Because that would be funny if he did. I want to see him on McAfee's show doing that. Look, man, it's just I've been screaming for years what that dude was about. I'm just happy that people are finally starting to see it. That's all. From the Goomy, do you think the importance of a quarterback is inflated due to how football games are broadcast? The viewing experience in stadium highlights way more about the whole game than TV and the shots of a quarterback throwing to unknown routes. Thanks. The simple answer to that is yes. This is probably a conversation we can get into a little bit more tomorrow on the live show, because you notice the reaction as we get further away from the Dolphins being bounced, from the Cowboys being bounced. To me, the Cowboys is a simple thing. Mike McCarthy's your head coach, and this is what happens. Hard stop. With the Dolphins, it's about, all right, how do you get over the finesse tag that's been given to you with all the data that we now have, that when it gets tough for the Dolphins, they don't have another way to win. The reason why I always double down on the Chiefs is that we were talking about roles earlier. The Chiefs know what they are now. They're not trying to be something they're not. And they've now become a defense-first ball control team that also happens to have the best quarterback in the game right now. What more could you ask for? What more could you ask for?
They have the best coach too.
There's that too. So I still think based on how Kansas City is playing, they will beat the Bills this weekend, because the Bills are
still the Bills.
They're still the Bills, and they're still known to be mistake prone, which is something that you don't necessarily see out of the Chiefs down the stretch. Okay. So just something to keep in mind. But the reaction has been, well, you got to throw that quarterback out. It's time to move on from Dak Prescott. Is it? You know what? Tua Tagovailoa, I've seen enough. Like his future with the Dolphins, it's time to draft another quarterback. Is it? I mean, because when things are running hot, he can run it pretty well, but maybe, get a more robust run game. Maybe hopefully stay healthy. Those types of things.
Yeah, I mean,
find different ways to win.
I think Miami's problems stem from losing both of their defensive ends.
Yeah.
You can't win a slog it out game without Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb.
Yeah.
Hard stop there.
You
okay.
can't do that.
So they're a different team. So I'm willing to get a little bit more on that side. The Dak issue is what Cam said. He is a manager.
There's nothing
He's
wrong
not
with
there is not. Dak's reluctance to run the football to me is the biggest issue with him. I'm watching that game against Green Bay, and he's trying to score 30 points on every play. It's like, no, pick up the first down, get some positive yardage, do a little something with your feet because you can.
Mm-hmm.
I like the brainwashing of some of these quarterbacks where they try to convince them that you have to stay in the pocket. You have to throw the ball. You're not allowed to make plays with your feet. What do we see out of playoff Josh Allen? Oh, look at that. We saw this at Clemson too with Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence all of those years. Oh, yeah, when you're playing Boston College, sling the thing around the yard.
Yeah, man.
Playing Ohio State, Alabama, guess what? Quarterback has to be a difference maker, has to be somebody who runs the football and extends drives and picks up and makes big plays. That's what Cam Newton did his whole career. And that's, we talked about this, how he was right.
Yeah, he was right.
We talk about, you want to give people their flowers this week, give them to Cam Newton.
He was right. He was absolutely right. And we'll get out of here on this last one from Sir Shaughnessy. Curious as to how much you post on other sites versus Twitter. Twitter reported highest traffic ever just recently. Okay. I'm going to set aside the fact that I don't trust numbers from technology companies.
Yeah.
Never trust numbers from tech companies. Okay. They'll find the one way to make it look like everything is great. No. I will say this. As I've spent less time on Twitter and more time on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, etc. Last night's a prime example of this. Twitter still gets you when something's happening live. And as much as I've tried to hang out
sporting
on
events,
as much as I've tried to hang out on Threads, and I do spend a lot of time there just kind of aggregating news, seeing what's going on, just kind of consuming, right? During a game, you can't replicate it. It's all there. If you want to get a sense and get in on the jokes and
here's
stuff
the
like
clip
that,
too.
here's the clip.
Yep.
It's all still there on Twitter. So what I've found myself doing in the last month or so is on game days, game nights, I'll have Twitter up. Like when I'm not posting to social, I'm not posting clips, here's the link to the podcast, that kind of stuff. When I'm not, that's most of my day on Twitter these days. But for game days, yeah, Twitter's up, man. Because nothing has replaced that. And that's tough to give up because you get a lot of information from people. And here's the other thing. Sometimes it's just fun to make jokes. It's that simple, man.
Doesn't have to be rocket science.
It really doesn't. Just like this podcast doesn't need to be rocket science. It's going to wrap it up. We will see you live, OG Live, presented by Sleek Fleet, sleek-fleet.com. We'll see you at 2:00 on YouTube.